हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल। तो आज की वीडियो में हम देखने वाले हैं एनसीईआरटी पॉलिटी क्लास 10, जिसमें आज हम देखेंगे चैप्टर नंबर 3 जो कि है डेमोक्रेसी एंड डाइवर्सिटी। तो शुरू करते हैं हमारा आज का चैप्टर। इन द लास्ट चैप्टर वी सॉ हाउ पावर कैन बी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड टू accommodate linguistic and regional diversities, but language and region are not the only features that give a distinct identity to people. Sometimes people also identify themselves and relate with others on the basis of their physical appearance, class, religion, gender, caste, tribe, etc. In this chapter, we study how democracy responds to social differences, divisions, and inequalities. We begin with an example of public expression of social divisions. We then draw some general lessons about how social differences can take various forms. We then turn to how democratic politics affects and is affected by these social diversities. A story from Mexico Olympics. The picture on this page depicts an important landmark in the history of the civil rights movements in the United States. Civil rights movements in the USA 1954 to 1968 refers to a set of events and reform movements aimed at abolishing legal racial discrimination against African Americans, led by Martin Luther King Jr. This movement practiced non-violent methods of civil disobedience against racial discriminatory laws and practices. This represents the medal ceremony of the 200-meter race in the 1968 Olympics held at Mexico City. The two men standing with clenched fists, unpraised and heads bowed, while the American national anthem was played, are the US athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos. They are African Americans. African American, Afro American, Black American, or Black are the terms used to refer mainly to the descendants of Africans who were brought into America as slaves between the 17th century and early 19th century. They had won the gold and bronze medals respectively. They received their medals wearing black socks and no shoes to represent black poverty. With this gesture, they tried to draw international attention to racial discrimination in the United States. The black globed and raised clenched fists. The black globed and raised clenched fists were meant to symbolize black power. The Black Power movement emerged in 1966 and lasted till 1975, which was a more militant anti-racist movement, advocating even violence if necessary to end racism in the US. The silver medalist, white Australian athlete Peter Norman wore a human rights badge on his heart during the ceremony to show his support to the two Americans. Do you think that Carlos and Smith should have raised an internal matter of American society in an international forum? Or you say that what they did was political? Why do you think Peter Norman, who was neither black nor American, joined in the gesture of protest? If you were in Norman's place, what would you do? The International Olympic Association held Carlos and Smith guilty of violating the Olympic spirit by making a political statement. Their medals were taken back. Back home, they were subjected to a lot of criticism. Norman, too, suffered for his action and was not included in the Australian team for the next Olympic. But their action succeeded in gaining international attention for the civil rights movement in the US. Recently, the San Jose, pronounced San Jose State University, of which they were former students, honored them and installed the statue in the university campus. When Norman died in 2006, Smith and Carlos were pallbearers at his funeral. Differences, similarities, divisions. The athletes in the example above were responding to social divisions and social inequalities. But does that happen only in societies which have racial division? In the previous two chapters, we have already noted some other forms of social division. The examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka show both regional and social divisions. In the case of Belgium, we noted that people who live in different regions speak different languages. In Sri Lanka, we noted linguistic as well as religious differences. Thus, social diversity can take different forms in different societies. Origins of social differences. These social differences are mostly based on accident of birth. Normally, we don't choose to belong to our community. We belong to it simply because we were born into it. We all experience social differences based on accident of birth in our everyday lives. People around us are male or female. They are tall and short, have different kinds of complexions, or have different physical abilities or disabilities. But all kinds of social differences are not based on accident of birth. Some of the differences are based on our choices. For example, some people are atheists. They don't believe in God or any religion. Some people choose to follow a religion other than the one in which they were born. Most of us choose what to study, which occupation to take up, and which games or cultural activities to take part in. All these lead to formation of social groups that are based on our choices. Every social difference does not lead to social division. Social differences divide similar people from one another, but they also unite very different people. People belonging to different social groups share differences and similarities cutting across the boundaries of their groups. In the instance above, Carlos and Smith were similar in one way. Both were African American and thus different from Norman, who was white, but they were also all similar in other ways. They were all athletes who stood against racial discrimination. It is fairly common for people belonging to the same religion to feel that they do not belong to the same community because their caste or sect is very different. It is also possible for people from different religions to have the same caste and feel close to each other. Rich and poor persons from the same family often do not keep close relations with each other for they feel they are very different. Thus, we all have more than one identity and can belong to more than one social group. We have different identities in different contexts. Overlapping and cross-cutting differences. Social division takes place when some social difference overlaps with other differences. The difference between the blacks and whites becomes a social division in the US because the blacks tend to be poor, homeless, and discriminated against. In our country, the Dalits tend to be poor and landless. They often face discrimination and injustice. Situations of this kind produce social divisions when one kind of social difference becomes more important than the other and people start feeling that they belong to different communities. If social differences cross-cut one another, it is difficult to pit one group of people against the other. It means that groups that share a common interest on one issue are likely to be in different sides on a different issue. Consider the cases of Northern Ireland and the Netherlands. Both are predominantly Christian but divided between Catholics and Protestants. In Northern Ireland, class and religion overlap with each other. If you are Catholic, you are also more likely to be poor, and you may have suffered a history of discrimination. In the Netherlands, class and religion tend to cut across each other. Catholics and Protestants are about equally likely to be poor or rich. The result is that Catholics and Protestants have had conflicts in Northern Ireland while they do not do so in the Netherlands. Overlapping social differences create possibilities of deep social divisions and tensions. Cross-cutting social differences are easier to accommodate. Social divisions of one kind or another exist in most countries. It does not matter whether the country is small or big. India is a vast country with many communities. Belgium is a small country with many communities. Even those countries such as Germany and Sweden that were once highly homogeneous are undergoing rapid change with influx of people from other parts of the world. Homogeneous society is society that has similar kinds of people, especially where there are no significant ethnic differences. Migrants bring with them their own culture and tend to form a different social community. In this sense, most countries of the world are multicultural. Migrant anybody who shifts from one region or country to another region within a country or to another country, usually for work or other economic opportunities. Politics of social divisions. How do these social divisions affect politics? What does politics do to these social divisions? As at first sight, it would appear that the combination of politics and social divisions is very dangerous and explosive. Democracy involves competition among various political parties. Their competition tends to divide any society. If they start competing in terms of some existing social divisions, it can make social divisions into political divisions and lead to conflict, violence, or even disintegration of a country. This has happened in many countries. Range of outcomes. Take the case of Northern Ireland that we referred to above. The region of the United Kingdom has been for many years the site of violent and bitter ethno-political conflict. Its population is divided into two major sects of Christianity. 53% are Protestants, while 45% are Roman Catholics. The Catholics were represented by nationalist parties who demanded that Northern Ireland be unified with the Republic of Ireland, a predominantly Catholic country. The Protestants were represented by Unionists who wanted to remain with the UK, which is predominantly Protestant. Hundreds of civilians, militants, and security forces were killed in the fight between Unionists and Nationalists, and between the security forces of the UK and the Nationalists. It was only in 1998 that the UK government and the Nationalists reached a peace treaty, after which the latter suspended their armed struggle. In Yugoslavia, the story did not have a happy ending. Political competition along religious and ethnic lines led to the disintegration of Yugoslavia into 6 independent countries. Bulgaria, Romania, or India. Ganesh had come back from his trip and was talking to Mahaswata about the Roma people who live in many countries of Eastern Europe. He met Yodranka, who works as a nurse in Bulgaria. This is what she has to say about Roma people. Being a nurse, you can't refuse to look after some people, but these Roma people are very dirty. Even when something small happens to anyone in their family, all the family and even the neighbors just march to our hospital. And once they are in the hospital, they don't know how to keep quiet. They talk aloud, smoke, and drop ashes all over and spit on the wall. They have no patience and they just start pestering our doctors. And when they are just hanging out like that anyway, they look so aggressive. After all, these dark skinned people don't look like us. They have a strange sense of color. Look at their dress. Why can't they try to look like everyone else in the country? and we all know they are thieves. I have heard people say that these Roma people live by selling their blood. None of them can afford the hospital fees. But when they are ill, they just rush to the hospital at the cost of good Bulgarians who pay their taxes. That sounds familiar, said Mahasota. Ganesh went on to talk about Modruzeni, a Romani who lives in Romania. When she was 18 years old, she went to the hospital to give birth to her first child. She had no money to pay to the doctor or nurse. Though she was in the hospital, nobody bothered to come and take care of her. Finally, the sweeper, who was also a Romani, helped her give birth to a boy. And then the nurse appeared on the scene and said, "Here we have another criminal." Talking about how the Roma people are treated in public hospitals, she says, "These doctors keep us waiting outside their cabin. On one occasion, one doctor asked me to take a bath if I need to be examined. Of course, I smelled. During the pregnancy, I ate from the garbage containers because I was so hungry all the time. My husband had left me. I had two children and I was pregnant with the third. The social worker refused my request for food assistance. My neighbor helped me to deliver the baby. I often feel it is better not to visit these hospitals." Mahaswata heard him out and said, "Ganesh, why do you have to travel halfway across the world to find this out? This is not a story about Romania and Bulgaria or about the Roma people. This is as much a story about our own country and about our people who are branded as criminals by our system." Such examples lead some people to conclude that politics and social divisions must not be allowed to mix. They think that it would be best if there are no social divisions in any country. If social divisions do exist in a country, they must never be expressed in politics. At the same time, every expression of social divisions in politics does not lead to such disasters. We have already seen that social divisions of one kind or another exist in most countries of the world. Wherever they exist, these divisions are reflected in politics. In a democracy, it is only natural that political parties would talk about this. Divisions make different promises to different communities, look after due representation of various communities, and make policies to redress the grievances of the disadvantaged communities. Social divisions affect voting in most countries. People from one community tend to prefer some party more than others. In many countries, there are parties that focus only on one community. Yet, all this does not lead to disintegration of the country. Three determinants. Three factors are crucial in deciding the outcome of politics of social division. First of all, the outcome depends on how people perceive their identities. If people see their identities in singular and exclusive terms, it becomes very difficult to accommodate. As long as people in Northern Ireland saw themselves as only Catholic or Protestant, their differences were difficult to reconcile. It is much easier if the people see that their identities are multiple and are complementary with the national identity. A majority of Belgians now feel that they are as much Belgian as they are Dutch or German speaking. This helps them to stay together. This is how most people in our country see their identity. They think of themselves as Indian as well as belonging to a state or a language group or a social or religious community. Second, it depends on how political leaders raise the demands of any community. It is easier to accommodate demands that are within the constitutional framework and are not at the cost of another community. The demand for only Sinhala was at the cost of the interest and identity of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka. In Yugoslavia, the leaders of different ethnic communities presented their demands in such a way that this could not be accommodated within a single country. Third, it depends on how the government reacts to the demands of different groups. As we saw in the examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka, if the rulers are willing to share power and accommodate the reasonable demands of minority community, social divisions become less threatening for the country. But if they try to suppress such a demand in the name of national unity, the end result is often quite the opposite. Such attempts at forced integration often sow the seeds of disintegration. Thus, the assertion of social diversities in a country need not be seen as a source of danger. In a democracy, political expression of social divisions is very normal and can be healthy. This allows various disadvantaged and marginal social groups to express their grievances and get the government to attend to this. Expression of various kinds of social divisions in politics often results in their cancelling one another out and thus reducing their intensity. This leads to strengthening of a democracy. But a positive attitude towards diversity and a willingness to accommodate it do not come about easily. People who feel marginalized, deprived, and discriminated have to fight against the injustices. Such a fight often takes the democratic path, voicing their demands in a peaceful and constitutional manner and seeking a fair position through elections. Sometimes social differences can take the form of unacceptable level of social inequality and injustice. The struggle against such inequalities sometimes take the path of violence and defense of state power. However, history shows that democracy is the best way to fight for recognition and also to accommodate diversity. तो यह है इस चैप्टर का एक्सरसाइज और इसी के साथ हमारा ये चैप्टर कंप्लीट हो गया है। तो अगर आप चैनल पर नए हैं तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिए और नोटिफिकेशन आइकन पर क्लिक कर दीजिए ताकि आपको सारे वीडियोस के अपडेट्स मिल सके। और अगर आपको वीडियो अच्छी लगे तो लाइक कर दीजिए, साथ ही अपने दोस्तों के साथ शेयर कीजिए ताकि उन्हें भी हेल्प हो सके। तो हमारा आज का ये चैप्टर यहीं तक था। थैंक यू, थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।